Hi everyone, welcome back to Pine Hollow out of Diagnostics. Today we have an interesting European case study, 2012 Volkswagen Tiguan diesel parasitic drain complaint. The customer said about a year ago his battery just died overnight, I guess. Replaced the battery. It's a big sucker under the driver's seat, and it just, if he leaves it for a few days, 2 to 3 days, he can't start the car. So this has been going on for about a year. He's been trickle charging it. You can't really disconnect the battery very easily. You got to remove the seat. So he said it's a pain in the ass. He wants it diagnosed. So here it is, 139,000 miles. We got the TOPDON battery charger. I set it at 12.9 volts. Just to maintain battery voltage, we don't want to cook anything. First plan of attack is do a full health report. Let's see how many modules this thing has, if anything interesting is stored. So, function limitation due to insufficient voltage, comfort system central control module, voltage terminal 30. So all this stuff, energy management active. Following systems are okay, 1, 2, and 3. So I saved that. Let's go back to our tree. We have 4, 8, 12, 16, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 21, 22, 23 modules. So not as many modules as, for example, a Lincoln MKC of the 2015 variety, but still a lot of modules. So right now, cleared all DTCs, shut the vehicle off, turn it back on, rescan it just to make sure we have no trouble codes stored, and then we'll remove the seat and get to the battery so we can actually measure the parasitic draw. So, looks all green. Do you want to clear? Yes. So this key is really stupid. It's a fob. Why do you need to put a fob in the hole? Anyways, let's close the door, let it go to sleep, and I'll rescan it. Alright, so the only code left in the vehicle is this parallel parking park assist speaker open circuit short circuit to ground. So not too worried about that code, but keep that in mind. I'll save this report, and then we'll get to removing the seat. You're going to need a triple square socket. I don't even know what number that is. So 2 bolts up here. 2 bolts back there. This is honestly super ridiculous. There's the driver's seat. Now I don't want to unplug the seat in case it has anything to do with the draw, so it's got electrical connectors and airbag connectors. And it's just shoved out of the way so we can get to this. The most giant vehicle battery you've ever seen. That's right, it's like, I don't know, 2 feet long. It's ridiculous. So let's put our ammeter in series with the negative battery terminal. I'll do that. And you have to be careful not to break the circuit. So you want to, I'm going to wiggle the clamp off and try to shove this clamp and touch it to the battery post. Let's see if we can get that on camera here. Again, not that easiest thing to do. Okay, here we go. Okay, it's coming up. Okay, that's on there. You want this on here. And 4 amps. Holy crap, that's a big draw. Now again, the car might not be completely asleep, but it's very excessive. So let me put a piece of paper between the terminals so we can monitor this draw. Oh, 2 amps, 4 amps. Yeah, that's really high. Let me set that up long term, and then, well, we can log it overnight, see what happens with the maintainer on there, but the maintainer needs to be here on the battery posts, not under the hood, because then that will obviously interfere with our readings. Like super excessive amp draw. Wow. The only reason this thing can survive 2 days with this is because of the size of the battery. This is literally at least twice the size of a regular vehicle battery. No wonder they had no other place to put it. You have to shove it under the driver's seat. Alright, so we're down to 1.8 amps. There's some stuff going on under the hood for the first like 15 minutes. Now I want to hook up the Wi-Fi Parasitic Logger. This is a prototype that a viewer sent me, and we used this on one video before. This is another perfect application. So instead of the ammeter, we want to hook up this to clamp it right here. You see our ammeter went down to 0.2. Now I'll unplug, or we can just disconnect this lead right here. So now that's 0, that's disabled. Let's set up the old smartphone and see what our amp draw is. There it is, 1.8 amps, and I'm just going to leave this here overnight, and we're going to log it every 5 seconds. Hit the play button. This is super awesome. We'll see if it's a constant 1.8 amp draw. I suspect it will be. So we'll let that simmer overnight. I have the battery maintainer at 12.9 volts. You can see it's putting out 2.9 amps right now. And then, well, then we proceed with the classic. We can try a thermal camera, but if we don't see anything warm inside the car. Now, I did latch all the doors so we can swing them open, get access to fuse boxes, whatever we need to do. If we don't see anything with a thermal camera, we'll have to go to the fuse boxes and measure voltage drops on some of the fuses. Now this thing might have like 3 or 4 fuse boxes, so this might take a while. Alright, it's been about half an hour since we started the logging. About 20 minutes. Very stable 1.8 amps. Okay, so I want to try out a new thermal camera that I just received from TOPDON, the TC004. Now this is a standalone camera versus the piggyback TC001 that is amazing. So let's try this one out. Same resolution. And just go around the car and see if anything jumps out. So for example, the engine was run like an hour ago for a little while, but you can still see that it's... Now I put the readings in Celsius because I like temperature in Celsius, and you're just going to have to convert that yourself, but that's about 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so it shows the actual reading, the maximum, and the minimum. You can see the little cursors jumping around. There's our battery charger. Let's take a look in the interior. Okay. I'm noticing a couple hot spots. So that right there is our climate control. That's the climate control, and that is right now at about like 55 degrees C. So it's a little warmer than the surroundings, which is you know, below 50 Fahrenheit. See that? See the cursors. It looks like the cluster's burning up. Let's take a look at the cluster temperature. The car, keep in mind the car's been off for a long time. That right there is very suspicious. So 25C is getting close to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. That's abnormal. So that's a huge clue. I like that. Take a look at our battery. There's our Wi-Fi logger. Obviously there's a little hot spot on the cable, the logger itself. We can jump into the back area. See if there's anything back here that's notable. So I see a little hot spot right there, but again, the thermal camera adjusts the scale automatically. So when it says max 11C and the surroundings is, 7, there could be a module back there. But I wouldn't get too excited about that just yet. The cluster is burning up. So that's my suspicion. I want to take a look at the wiring diagram, see what feeds constant battery power to the cluster, see if there's an easy fuse to pull out. We can definitely, if we find the fuse, measure the voltage drop across it, see if it's carrying a lot of current. And then we're logging the current all the time, so we can easily pull the fuse out, see what the current does. So, looking at some wiring diagrams. This is going to be a network diagnosis, meaning some module out of the 25 is staying awake and keeping other modules awake. Yes, the cluster is warm. Yes, the HVAC unit is warm. We have 1.8 amps right now on the total draw. And my thought process is, well, I measured voltage drops on the fuses. Indeed, the cluster fuse had 5.7 millivolts drop, but so did 3 30 amp fuses for the comfort system, and so did fuse number 24 for the climatronic. So basically, the thermal camera is helpful, but in this case, we still have to go to the scope all the networks out and see which ones are active, which one's staying awake. Because you could say, oh, the cluster is really hot, that must be the problem. You call the cluster, absolutely wrong diagnosis. It could be the cluster, but you're not proving it with the thermal camera. Thermal camera is just a direction, not the actual diagnosis. So the approach here is pull up the diagram for the CAN bus system, and here's our DLC. It talks to this diagnostic board interface left end of dash, and from there we have, this is like the gateway, and we have multiple networks coming off. So I counted 4 networks and I labeled them drivetrain, interior, comfort, and safety, and the corresponding pin number coming off the gateway. To get to that module, we need to remove the seat. Now the seat is also a module on the comfort network. So if we scroll down, again, this is redrawn. So this is like the safety stuff. This is the drivetrain stuff. There's the let's see, ABS, differential control, parking aid, level control. Here's our engine control module. This is the drivetrain network. And then we have this comfort networks like front passenger seat adjustment module, driver's seat adjustment module. That's the orange, green, and orange, brown wires. And then finally we have the there's a comfort system right here. This is what our thermal camera showed. Climatronic, instrument cluster. These are all on, I'm going to call it the interior can, this orange violet and orange brown. So before removing the seat, I plugged in the PICOSCOPE onto the network wire on that bulk connector just to see if the comfort can is also staying awake. Here's the PICOSCOPE. Sure enough, we see activity on the comfort network, which is not the instrument cluster and HVAC network, the interior. So sure enough, there's just constant talking. This just proves my point that we need to get to the gateway module and put a scope on these 4 network pins and see if they're all talking. If they are, we'll unplug the gateway and see if just one of the networks is talking, and then we'll go from there. It's completely a waste of time to start pulling fuses for the cluster, the comfort system. It'll reduce our draw, yes, but it won't help us pinpoint the root cause of the problem. That's what I'm trying to emphasize here. So with the scope running and the ammeter, let's unplug that bulk connector and see what happens. I mean, I have to take the seat out anyways. There's no way around it. So let's do that, see if anything changes. Potentially, it could be the seat is staying awake, and then through the gateway, keeping the other networks awake. Anything's possible. Alright, there's the scope. You can even put the meter in here. Kind of see that. Let me unplug this bulk connector without disturbing too much. Let's see, it's double. Okay, there we go. Nothing changed there. We're down to 1.7 instead of 1.8 amps. So yes, the seat was drawing a little bit, but network's still awake. So now we can remove the seat completely and get to this gateway module. And go from there. Got the seat out. Didn't have to undo the seat belt. It's just going to sit right there. So we have our activity on the comfort network and 1.7 amps draw. So peeling back the onion here, I'm trying to get to this gateway module. And I think it lives right up there, so not too accessible. But I noticed this little wire coming off the DLC. You see some electrical tape, like someone spliced into that. And then that goes up here to a 3 amp fuse. And then there's a ground wire that's just tied to this bracket. What the heck is this? And is it drawing any current? Well, let's do a voltage drop measurement on that 3 amp fuse and see if there's anything suspicious. Alright, there's the meter. Let me put my leads in the stupid little fuse. Consistent 1 millivolt drop if I can keep my leads on the fuse. Let's Try this again. Okay, right there. 0.8. Okay, so that's enough evidence for me to pull this aftermarket, whatever that is, and watch the scope and watch our amp draw. So I'm going to pull it out. Let's see what happens. Okay, pulled it out. We're down to 1.69. And our network is still not going to sleep. Okay, so we'll keep that in mind. We'll keep this fuse here. I don't like aftermarket stuff, so better to disable it and then keep going after the big fish, because if that was a problem, we would have seen a difference. Alright, so we're going after this number 3 in the picture. That would be the data bus onboard diagnostic interface J533. And it has 2 connectors. If we look at our computer data lines, so there's 2 like fiber optic cables on. Oh. So T32A is going to be that big bulk connector. So I need to unplug it in order to scope anything at all. Try to, get to those wires, and then we'll see on the scope when I unplug it if the comfort can goes to sleep. All right, I got that sucker unlatched. Definitely a reach around move. So I'm gonna unplug it if possible, and we're gonna see what happens on here. Oh, come on. You can do it. There we go. So that's unplugged. We still have 1.7 amps. Now we have 1 amp. Is the comfort can going to go to sleep? We'll find out shortly. Get this stupid connector out of here. Okay, there we go. So we were down to 1 amp. Comfort can is still awake. We can go measure the voltage drop on the cluster fuse, see if that went to sleep. But now I have access to all of the network wires right here, just barely. So we can see which network's awake. Alright, so the proof is in the pudding here. The cluster fuse, this 5 amp, used to be, when I wrote down, for like 5 millivolts drop. Now we're down to 0, so the cluster went to sleep. So now the infrared camera will show that that's going to cool down. I'm sure of it. Another fuse that had a draw. Let's be scientific here. So 5.7 millivolts on fuse 52, 5 amp. That went to 0. So this is unplug gateway. This goes to 0.0 millivolts. Check. So the comfort system was fuse 31, 33, and 30. And fuse 24, 10 amp Climatronic. That would be this one right here. Let's see if that one went to sleep. I assume it did. Let's open up our little voltmeter holder. So this 10 amp, fuse number 24, 0. Bingo. Now these 3, I suspect the comfort system is still going to be awake. Yep, 0.1. If it fluctuates like that, you're not 100% asleep. 0.1 and 0 on that one. That's still 0.1. That's still 0.1. So comfort can stays awake. So this is one of the key moments here is unplug gateway. You have to get to the gateway, even though it's a pain in the ass. Get to it, unplug it, and then you can separate the networks. So right now we're down to a steady 1 amp and our comfort can is awake. We're probing it right at the seat, which we unplug. So now I have to go back to the wiring diagram and list all the modules on this comfort can, and then see if we can disable those one at a time. Alright, here we go. The orange and green comfort network. Let's see what modules are on here. So this is the OE diagram, and you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 modules. Like, okay, we're in good shape, but we have to go to 142. Track 142 goes to here from 100, and we have another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 5 plus 6 is 11 modules. So I wrote them all down. Again, this takes time. You have to be methodical. We have driver's door, comfort central module, steering column, rear lid, driver's seat, towing, passenger door, vehicle, electrical, front passenger seat, rear camera, and peripheral camera. Some of these may not be equipped. These are all of the possibilities. Driver's seat we unplugged, and the gateway we unplugged. So we're down to 10 modules. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now one by one we have to keep looking at the scope on this wire and see if we can get this network to go to sleep. So we have 10 modules to disable. Either pull a fuse or unplug the module, whichever is easier. It's a long, tedious process, but once we get there, the result will be very interesting. Some of these modules live in the trunk, so is it possible that water got in there? Perhaps. But let's just go one at a time and see where that leads. Okay, so doing a little research. First, I looked up rear camera, peripheral camera, fuse box C, fuse 25. Well, fuse 25, 22, 23, 24, 25 does not exist. It does not have a rear camera or peripheral camera. Okay, that makes our job easier. So 2 knocked off right there, so now we're down to 8. Next one I want to check is the rear lid. So that's fuse panel C, fuse number 23, 25 amp. That's J605. And I measure the voltage drop on that fuse. You see 0.1 amps. Now that's not surprising. There might be a little draw since that circuit's awake, but it's an easy fuse to pull. So let's just pull it out, look at our draw, look at our scope. Okay, so I pulled it out. It's still alive. Now we're down to 0.97. So that's not the cause of the network staying awake. So this is pull, about 0.1 amps. So that's not it. We can reinstall the fuse so we don't forget. Fuse number 23. So it's not the rear lid. Now we're down to 7. Driver's door, comfort central, steering column, towing, passenger door, vehicle, electrical. Got to do some more research. Next up, towing module J345. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fuses in fuse box C feeding that one. Battery positive is 5, 6, 7, and 8. And you can see that right here. There's our J345 towing recognition control module. So SC5, 6, 7, 8, and then SC42. Handy to have this pulled up, which is the fuse box, and for each fuse it tells you what it feeds and what terminal it is. So terminal 30 is battery, and then terminal 15 is ignition. So we're only worried about terminal 30. So fuse 5, 6, 7, and 8. I measured the draws. There were no draws, but we can still pull all 4. Look at our scope. See if anything changes. So we got 4 fuses out, no change on the draw, no change on our activity. So I'm going to pop these back in and mark towing. It's not towing. It's the third one we checked. 5, 6, 7, 8. No change. We're down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Next up, I actually just went down the fuse list here. Front passenger door control module J387, 30 amp, fuse 11. So passenger door J387, fuse 11. That would be this one right here. And there's a 0.1 millivolt drop on there. Let's pull it out. See what happens on the scope. Okay, here we go. Again. No. Oh, wow. We got it. That's cool. That moment right there makes this job worth it. Look at our draw. We're down to 0.2. That's promising. Let's see if it'll go to sleep completely. I have to plug my phone in because this old phone doesn't have much battery capacity. That's really neat. We'll see what happens here. That's still not great, 200 milliamps. Well, let's look at that money shot. Right there. So that was passenger door. That was the 4th one I tried. C fuse 11. Pretty crazy. So this is network asleep, down to 200 milliamps. That one right there. So I'm just going to see if the car goes to sleep completely, down to like 10 milliamps or not, and we'll plug the gateway back in, make sure everything else still works. Leave this fuse unplugged, make sure the draw is no longer there at all. Well, let's do an experiment. Let's push this fuse back in into the appropriate slot, number 11, and see if the network wakes up. See what our draw is. Here we go. Yep. Back in action, and our draw. Oh, I guess it. Oh, I got to reset the probe. I don't know why that reset. Okay, so very interesting. The network went back to sleep, even though we basically pulled the fuse and put it back in, and now everything's fine. That's a very common problem with modules that, you turn the ignition off and the battery power is maintained, it doesn't go to sleep. You remove the battery power, put it back in, everything's perfect. We've seen this before on other vehicles. So now everything looks pretty good. Let me plug in the diagnostic can. We'll plug in the regular ammeter and see what the final draw is. So after plugging in the gateway, just have the regular ammeter now. It's been maybe 1 minute and we're less than 100 milliamps. This is very promising, and it's slowly dropping, so something is still slowly falling asleep. Our network is nice and quiet, so we'll wait for that for a little bit. Now with that huge battery, maybe 90 milliamps is okay, but I want to see that go down to like maybe 20 or 30. Oh, see, went up, went down. We'll give it a few minutes. Victory! We're down to 5 milliamps after about 20 minutes. Yes! Success! Alright, so now we can repeat the experiment. Turn on the ignition, turn off the ignition, have the scope on the comfort can. If it doesn't go to sleep, pull this fuse out, goes to sleep. We need a new passenger door module. We'll quote the customer on that, but there's, it's a module fault. It's just not going to sleep. Amazing. Parasitic draws. So for this one, I would easily charge probably 4 hours diag time, maybe 5 because of the seat removal. And then the repair will be on top of that. I don't know if this module needs to be programmed. We can look that up. But that's it for this one. If we get a new module, will be some bonus footage. Thanks a lot for watching. This kind of stuff, just, really, it's really challenging, but really rewarding. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Alright, a little bonus footage. So, I turned the car on, play around with the windows, the doors, basically, use that door module and shut everything off, and everything seems to go to sleep now. So a power reset on that module temporarily fixed it. Now is that long term? Probably not. However, plugged in this aftermarket 3 amp fuse, and we're around 50 to 60 milliamps. Okay, so that's, I don't know what that is, but I want to unplug it and see if we drop down to, like 5 like we were before. Let me do that real quick. And I'm going to pull it out. Let me wait until it goes up to like 60. It's got to be some tracking device. Right there. 80, 50, boom. So I pulled it out, down to 5. So that's the second parasitic draw. This little thing, I'll put that in the cup holder. This is known good. 5 milliamps, fantastic. So 2 separate issues. The big one was the passenger door module that is now fixed by, with a reset, and then the aftermarket whatever is drawing like 50 milliamps. Awesome.